I actually got to scuba dive with the astronauts. During my time at NASA, I had seen multiple shuttle launches. That's a historically interesting question.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's interview. Today, I am joined by Andrew, who has been an engineer at NASA, among other things, and we're really excited to interview him here at Total Space. Hello, Andrew, please introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, my name is Andrew Parris. I'm a broadcast television engineer, but I spent 13 years of my career from 1987 to 2000 working for NASA doing television coverage out there.
Really nice. So what have you been up to today?
Well, today I was coming into work to do this interview, but this week I'm in Honolulu working for NBC Sports covering the Sony Open. It's part of my job as a television engineer, but space is my first dream and trying to get back into it now and talking space with people. I love doing that.
Yeah, I bet trying to get it on television is more stressful than the sport itself, like golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, without further ado, we'll get to our first question. Right, can you explain to the viewers what you did in the space sector?
Absolutely, yeah. So in 1987, there was a job opening out in California at the Dryden Flight Research Center for one of the television contractors, and a friend of mine who had previously worked there said, "Hey, Andrew, you always like to go to space or talk about space and work in space. This would be a perfect job." So I got hired on there, and I did from 87 to 90. I did television coverage of the shuttle landings out at Dryden at Edwards Air Force Base, and that involved more than just a shuttle, but we did all the activities out there at Dryden for NASA. But our big thing was shuttle coverage. We had single camera microwave trucks that we would go around and shoot the different angles of the shuttle landing live. And then I was actually very lucky. I was on the truck that was part of the convoy. So when we would roll up to the convoy and document the activities there and so forth. And then in 90, I moved, the contract ended there and I got a job with the same company back in Houston, which was where I was from, and got to work at the Johnson Space Center for 10 years. And that was a really fun job because I got to do a little bit of everything. I actually got to scuba dive with the astronauts during their EVA training as a safety diver, handling a video camera. And then I also got to fly zero-G for a couple of years, doing the we used to call the vomit comet. And that was a real experience. And I got to travel around the world documenting construction of the International Space Station to Russia and all over the United States. And then I also was fortunate enough to go to Kazakhstan to the Baikonur Cosmodrome for the launch of the first space station crew in 2000.
Right. So, with your experience in 10 years, where do you see NASA?
Well, I see NASA, hopefully, in 10 years, we're going to be talking about the first parts of the mission to Mars, manned mission to Mars. Of course, we're going back to the moon with the Artemis program to learn how to go to Mars. And so all the techniques and hardware and software that we need to do that, we're going to test out locally around the moon. So in 10 years, hopefully, we'll be talking about the first unmanned missions, maybe the supply missions to the moon. Very similar to what you saw in the movie The Martian. Kind of that thing, but maybe a little updated. So,
question: if you could had the opportunity to be one of the first people on Mars to be a cameraman for the first landing on Mars, would you be?
Oh, absolutely, in a heartbeat. The exploration is in my blood. Like I've said, I've always wanted to go to space since I was a kid. My first real memory of what was out there, the space program, was the Apollo 8 Christmas Eve broadcast from around the moon.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness.
That struck me very hard, and it made me really think as a 7-year-old, hey, there's something out there. And so that's what the origins of my love for the space program have been.
Really nice. What are your thoughts on the Space Launch System, also known as SLS?
Well, that's a tough one. There's been a lot of press, some bad press about the SLS, how it's over budget and delayed. But people have to remember, so was the space shuttle. The space shuttle had a very, very hard berth. It was many years behind. I don't know if people realize this, but the original plan for the space shuttle was, one of its first mission was going to go up and raise the orbit of Skylab, and that was going to be the core of our first International Space Station. But because of delays and so forth, that didn't happen. And even when you go back to the Apollo program, there were the original timelines, because of the Apollo 1 fire and other problems, we didn't get to the moon till land on the moon till 1969. The original timelines had us landing in 66 or 67. So
that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
what SLS went through is nothing new. It's just not something well known. But I have to say, all problems aside, it was an amazing first flight. I was actually fortunate enough to get out and to Kennedy to watch the launch. And I made just about all the other previous launch attempts. So it was very satisfying to finally see the SLS launch. Now, as my time at NASA, I had seen multiple shuttle launches, both documenting it for NASA, but also just going as a space tourist or space fan. And the SLS launch topped that because it was technically 25% louder and brighter, of course. But it's getting to see the SLS finally launch and getting Artemis on its way, and watching the spectacular imagery that came back from Orion was just unbelievable.
GoPros on the Solaris.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. In fact, I've noted on social media several times. I found a frame from the Apollo 8 Christmas Eve broadcast. It was just blurry, black and white. You could barely tell what was going on. Where we've come from and where we are now, kind of thing, was amazing. But it's wonderful to see the world rediscovering the excitement of going to space, especially going to the moon. And I'm very excited to see the rest of the Artemis missions fly. And of course, with all the commercial space programs, the SpaceX and Blue Origin and so forth, putting their components into the whole missions is going to be great too.
Do you think the space shuttle could have flew longer, or do you think that the retirement date was about time?
Yeah, that's a historically interesting question. Having worked in the program and seen what it took to make that all work, and then reading what the promises were originally, the shuttle was advertised a little over advertised. There were a lot of promises made about the shuttle's reusability that never came to be. There were some politics involved there and so forth, but the shuttle was an amazing vehicle. Its capacity for carrying loads and so forth, and then coming home, reusability was the big thing. I don't think that is ever going to be in question, that the shuttle was an amazing vehicle. Like I said, the politics behind it and the reusability, the reality of the reusability was always the problem. But it did an amazing job. I wish the shuttle could have flown longer, but NASA, as a rule, NASA only has enough money to do one big thing. So that was, it was the shuttle, and then they wanted to do ISS, so they had to back down number of flights, and that's just the realities of NASA and the budget it gets. I have very fond memories of climbing through several of the orbiters during my time out of Dryden after the landings, and everybody left. They let us crawl through the flight deck and the mid deck, and to me, I still have to pinch myself and realize that I actually got to do that. It was very cool.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. We've talked about the past, but let's talk about the future. Where do you see the future of spaceflight?
Oh wow, that is a really good question, because it's pretty much unlimited at this point. I mean, what NASA's doing and whether other countries are doing, ESA and Japanese, and they're all have their new projects, manned and unmanned and so forth. Commercial space to me is the most exciting part, because we no longer have to worry about government funding and so forth. What SpaceX has done, nobody could have predicted this. I mean, it's hard to believe today, in 2023, there are people who still think SpaceX is not really as successful as they claim that people think they are. I mean, I still read negative stuff, but obviously the people who talk about SpaceX in that vein have another reason for doing it. They've got their own ideas. Anyway, But yeah, commercial space is the place to be. I mean, I'm actively trying to become a commercial astronaut myself. I'm working several different avenues, educational outreach. I volunteer at Space Center Houston now, which is one of the most wonderful things I could ever do, talking to the public and helping educate them. So commercial space, commercial space is the way to go. I mean, there are opportunities to go fly into space, and even near space. There's an organization out of Tucson called the Worldview. They're going to be flying passengers up to 100,000 feet to the stratosphere. And that's,
is that like the hot air balloon one?
That's a helium balloon, yes, sir.
Yes.
And that there are several other companies doing, but right now I've actually signed up to fly on Worldview, which is very exciting. We have a couple more years before that happens. And it was so exciting, I actually got 20 of my other friends to sign up. So it's a pretty big deal.
Is it expensive?
It's $50,000 US, which if you look at it's still a lot. That is a lot of money, but it's not as much as the $1 million for a seat on New Shepard. Yeah. And in fact, there are other companies doing the stratospheric balloon rides also, but they're charging much more. We like to think of Worldview as kind of the average person's opportunity to experience the overview effect. And that's really what it's about, is experiencing the overview effect.
Right. We're talking about the future, but we're talking about possible past and present now. If you were offered a flight on any past or present spacecraft, what would you choose?
Ooh. Well, I have a soft part in my heart for the shuttle, of course. And I've actually, over my years, have had actual dreams about flying the shuttle, not just dreams in the ethereal sense, but actual dreams about me being on the space shuttle and so forth. International Space Station, wonderful vehicle. Love to sit there and be able to wear on the Earth. But right now, I'd have to say either the Apollo or Orion, because they both have gone to the moon. And Orion's especially exciting because it's designed to be the deep space vehicle. And so it could theoretically go to Mars if they wanted to. But Orion or Apollo. Probably Orion because it's got a little more room and a better bathroom.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use a bathroom on Apollo.
Oh, there was none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bag.
A bag, yeah.
NASA went through quite a bit of engineering to finally evolve into this very simple, what we call
a bag. Yeah, essentially, yes.
Yes, for me personally, it has to be Starship.
Oh yeah. Well, I completely forgot about Starship. Sorry, Starship is still so theoretical. I mean, it's like I said, there's just so many opportunities now. Yeah, definitely Starship. Of course, if we're talking about theoretical future vehicles, I'll tell you it's Starship Enterprise. How's that?
Yeah, 100%. Right, you said you worked on Shuttle and the ISS. Can you ever see any project ever doing what those two projects achieved?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Both from the NASA side and the commercial side. I mean, Shuttle was a workhorse. Obviously, there are cheaper and more reliable methods for getting payloads into space and people in space, and that's the way that the world has gone. Space Station is an amazing piece of technology. It is really at the forefront of all technological endeavors. NASA is very, very protective of the space station, and that's why even when they talk about the eventual deorbiting of it in 2030, they're not just leaving it up to anybody. Okay, somebody else figure out what to do. And NASA is actually funding and putting the seed money in for the other commercial space stations, and that's so that they can take the work that they're doing on the space station, the science and the manufacturing, and they can move it to this commercial space station and continue that, because that really is the leading edge technology right now. That research you're doing on there is going to be beneficial. Has been for years, 20 plus years now, and will continue to do so.
I still hold out hope for some, even like a vehicle like Starship, being able to go up to the same orbit as a space station, grab a module, bring it back for a museum. Yeah,
specifically Starship has the potential for doing a lot of things, and multiple of those. It could be to replace the shuttle as the workhorse. And when you're talking about Elon's dream of having thousands of Starships, I mean, it's just like all of a sudden now traveling the moon and Mars would be like an everyday thing, like getting in your car or getting in a bus or being in an airliner. And I'm excited to see that. Now we're starting to hear from some of my friends down at Starbase that, and even some of this, I think Elon even tweeted yesterday that they're very close to a launch. Yeah, soon. Well, in Elon time, that could be 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing we learned about Elon time.
we are seeing massive signs of progress. We are going towards a wet dress rehearsal soon, I hope.
Yes, I can't wait. One of my good friends, Andrew Clifford, is down there covering it, and he keeps me up to date.
Right, you say you want to become a commercial astronaut. What is your plan to achieve that?
Well, that's a good question. It's one of those things that I've talked to several astronauts, former astronauts. I've actually had a lot of discussions with Dr. Sion Proctor, the Inspiration 4 pilot. And basically, there's no one set path. You have to find your own way. There are opportunities out there. There have been several Web3 organizations that have been funding seats on the New Shepard. I'm involved with one of those companies and hoping that someday pans out. But at this point, it's kind of like keeping your eyes and ears open. Dennis Titoff, of course, has purchased the second lunar starship, and at some point he's going to have to put people on that. So I'm waiting to hear about that. And there were several attempts at some reality shows where the winner was going to get to go to the International Space Station. Some of those have come and gone. I'm waiting for the next one. So it's just a matter of keeping the eyes and ear open. But at this point, just helping to educate the public about space and our future there, and share my enthusiasm is really my path right now.
Yeah. Did you apply for Dear Moon?
Oh God, yes. I think I made it to the third round too. There was a lot of questions about what round people made it to. I think I made it to the second or third round. I don't remember. But I want to say real quick, I'm very happy to see everyday astronaut Tim Dodd make it. I'm no more deserving people. And the reason he deserves to go because he doesn't think he should go. And it's one of those things like, yeah, he's the perfect guy for it. He is his name is perfect for that, the everyday astronaut, because he really has done a lot for the world in general as far as educating people to it. And he does nothing halfway too. He does everything full dive, and I can't wait to shake his hand before he flies.
Yeah, 100%. So what was your favorite moment at NASA in your opinion?
Oh boy, now you're making me think. I had quite a few of them. I mean, being able to go to Kazakhstan, to the Baikonur Cosmodrome, and it was a thrill the whole time I was there. I mean, getting to meet astronauts and be involved with programming, with the space program, and helping train. At one point, we trained Katie Coleman on STS-93, I think it was, to operate a high-definition television camera. And like I said, going to Baikonur, getting to be there. And I'm a bit of a junior space historian, so the Soviet space program was always very, very interesting. But it was one of those things like until you get there, you can't see it. So getting to go to Baikonur was a big deal. Wow, you're making it tough for me. I'm going to say at this point, so far in my career, the most memorable thing that I did was a shuttle launch. The launches, anytime I got to see a launch, that was a pretty big deal. Because it's one of those things, I call it the closest thing to a religious experience that I've ever had, that I want everybody else to share. The SLS launch was the same way. When you get to see something like that, it's more than just a piece of hardware flying. It represents our hopes and dreams and humanity and so forth. Is pretty inspirational. I tear up sometimes when I think about it.
That actually quite leads on to a slight question I have. Do you own any shuttle phone hardware? Not
any shuttle flown hardware, but I do have a couple of flown patches that were gifted to me by astronaut Eileen Collins. She was the first female shuttle pilot and first female shuttle commander, and both those flights I worked with her and her crew on crew training, and she gifted me flown patches, and those are very, very special to me. But no flown hardware at this point. The flown stuff is very cool, but my budget's doing a lot for that kind of thing. But the patches are a very big deal. At one point I was downsizing, and those are the two things I refused to separate.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned prior your visit to Baikonur to see the Buran. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we were there, and you have to remember, we were there in 2000. So there had been only a year or so before, there had been, how do I say this? There were some riots down there. There was a lot of economic stress going on down there. So by the time we got there, the facility was not in the shape that was its previous glory. But one thing we did get to do, they gave us some tours of like the launch some of their unused launch platforms from the Buran and Energia launch vehicles. But funny enough, we didn't even know that the Buran was still there. There were rumors that it was in Moscow, sightings all place. And just one day, our tour guy said, "Hey, you want to go see the shuttle?" And we're like, "Which one?" They said, "Oh, Buran." And they said, "But you have to leave all your cameras." We weren't allowed to bring any cameras inside. They didn't want it photographed. So we got to go in there, and it was stacked on an Energia launch. Wasn't a flyable. It was a test article. Yeah, it was a mock-up test article. And it was amazing to get to see that thing. They let us kind of climb up on the rig holding it, but we weren't allowed to touch it or anything. And just got to study about a half an hour to walk around it. And it was one of those things I said, God, I wish we could have had it taken a picture just to prove we were there. But unfortunately, less than 2 years later, the roof collapsed on it and destroyed it. And I was very sad when I heard that. And the remaining two a Buran shuttle, I think it was Sparrow or Little Bird and 3K are still in storage there. The building that they're in, they're also concerned about the roof collapsing also. And I know there's efforts to try to get those out of there.
Yeah, it's truly a sad story because it's in Kazakhstan. It's not owned by the space agency. Yeah. And did the guy not ask in exchange for the shuttles like some skull or something? Yeah,
there have been multiple attempts to either buy or trade or negotiate those out of there, and I do not know what the politics behind it is so far. I'm sure it's the country, the Russia still has to pay Kazakhstan for the use of the facility, and Kazakhstan wants to try to control it, and I don't blame them. It's a very valuable asset, and they deserve to have some control over it.
So when you were there, did you notice any major differences between the Buran and shuttle, or was it just a straight copy?
No. Well, that's the interesting story. The people say that, hey, look, they just copied the shuttle. Well, no, they may have, but that it has to do with aerodynamics and payload. When the shuttle was designed, the design we ended up with, the early designs were much smaller because the payloads were much smaller. But when they were looking for funding for the shuttle, they went to the military, and the military said, yeah, we'd love to fund this, but it's got to be big enough to take our big spy satellites, the KH-11 and KH-12 keyholes, which, for anybody who doesn't know what those are, they're essentially the Hubble. The Hubble's kind of based on that same airframe, space frame. And so and of course the Soviets said, well, we've got to be able to do the same thing. We need to be able to match their capacity. So when they put it all in the computer and they ran it, that's the basic shape that came out. And once again, why reinvent the wheel when you have something already done? So I don't blame them for taking that line. But the major difference between the shuttle and the Buran was that the Buran didn't have any main engines. It relied on its primary thrust from the Energia launch vehicle. So that in itself is the only real major difference.
Did Buran not have kind of a abort system?
Abort system? Yeah, I believe they had ejection seats like the early shuttle did. The first 4 flights of the shuttle had ejection seats.
That would be crazy, ejection from a shuttle. Could not imagine that.
I've actually talked to a few of them. They said that was just to cover the safety part. Depending on what point the ejection seats on the space shuttle had a very limited envelope. They basically launch pad to like maybe 10,000 or 20,000 feet, because at that time you get that speed up and you punch out. It was pretty much unsurvivable after that point.
Right, that is all our questions for you today. Do you have anything to say to the viewers, any social media, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to contact me, my Twitter handle is Parris, APARRISX, AParrisX. And if you're interested, I'm part of a group called the Inspired 24. We're a group of space-positive people who've joined together to help educate the public and also help people experience the overview effect. And you can check out the Inspired 24 at www.theinspired24.com.
How did you get the nickname Titan, by the way?
That was a call sign that they gave me. Our group, the Inspired 24, we give each other call signs. It's kind of a little thing we do, yeah. And so, and you don't give yourself one. The rest of the team picks one for you. It's a tradition. And so they picked Titan, and I can't argue with it. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This has been a great interview. Thanks again for joining us, Andrew. Have a good rest of your day. Ad Astra.
Thank you very much.